Good morning. Imagine if you were 94 years old, sitting on the side of a pool, watching your grandchildren have a ball going down a slide into the pool. What would you do? Most 94-year-olds would content themselves with sitting on the sidelines and watching, but Roy Beller of Oklahoma decided he wanted to get in on the fun. And so he asked his grandkids if they would help him go down the slide as well. And here is the result.
Is he able to swim?
Oh, he can swim.
Like when he lands in the water?
Yeah, he
Same right
he knows how to swim. He knows how to go. I have a boat grandpa. He's been going swimming. This is the hard one, Papa.
Oh, we thought you were calling him the...
Get your legs down. Hey, you know what you need? You gotta have a cowboy hat on.
Woo! Michael, make it wet.
Alright.
Now all you gotta do is push off.
When you're ready, they got everything to catch you down there.
Alright, ready?
Alright, here goes the flag. The big flag.
Hold on it. Now hold on it.
Lean back so you don't fall forward.
My phone died.
Now what I love about that story is indeed that Roy did not just sit on the sidelines, but he overcame what may have been some fear and maybe had to talk his grandkids out of some fear, and he pushed through a boundary. Most people would say 94-year-olds shouldn't do that, but he didn't feel that way, and he had this wonderful opportunity to get in on the action rather than sitting on the sidelines. In many ways, I think that is the role of the Holy Spirit in our lives. The Holy Spirit wants us to get in on the action, whether it is simply enjoying our lives, not wasting our lives, but finding ways to push through boundaries and do things that might scare us a little bit in order for us to really enjoy our lives rather than playing it safe and always sitting on the sidelines. And that is not simply true of doing things like going down a sliding board, but much more importantly in doing the ministry that we're called to do. The Holy Spirit consistently in the Bible is pushing through barriers. We see Jesus teaching his disciples that as he goes and he talks with women at a time when no man would talk with a woman publicly. As he crosses over racial lines and asks his disciples to do the same. Let's go to Samaria and minister to the Samaritans. As he touches people who were sick, and in that day and age, people who were sick were thought to be people who were being punished by God, and if you touched them, you became unclean. Jesus would touch them because he recognized that was an unfair boundary, an untrue boundary. Jesus even encouraged his disciples to reach out to Roman soldiers, enemies. And we see the Holy Spirit doing that so often in the book of Acts. Perhaps one of my favorite examples is when Paul and Luke are trying to figure out what is it we're supposed to do, where are we supposed to minister. And in Acts 16, Luke tells us they, meaning Paul and his group, went through the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. When they had come opposite Mysia, they attempted to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So, passing by Mysia, they went down to Troas. And during the night, Paul had a vision. There stood a man of Macedonia, pleading with him and saying, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." This is essentially a story of the Spirit, of the Holy Spirit just herding Paul and his group. They want to speak in Asia and they're not allowed to. And then they want to kind of hang a right and go through Asia Minor. And again, the Spirit pushes them down to Troas, which was a coastal city, getting them ready to push across a huge boundary and go to Greece, which also is Macedonia is another word for Greece. And so we see them, the gospel making its way into what we would call today the Western world through the Holy Spirit pushing Paul, taking him, asking him to cross over this boundary. So thinking about Roy Beller, thinking about the Holy Spirit pushing Paul, what is the Holy Spirit pushing you to do today to get out of your comfort zone? Who are you being called to minister to? Who are you being called to reach out to? Who knows? It may be just as significant as Paul taking the gospel to Greece for the very first time. We can do these things because we know God is with us.